is you have to listen to views you don't agree with, challenge them and try and argue your case.
It's the whole way our constitution's set up. If you just look at the chamber of the House of Commons, you have two sides opposite each other to come and battle over the opinions. And I think the best way of exposing unpleasant opinions or ideas that won't work is by debating them and looking at the flaws in them and explaining them to people. And that way, you're much more effective at undermining bad ideas than you are if you simply say they mustn't be discussed, and then people will discuss them privately or will hide them away and they'll emerge later. So I rather agree with you that, I mean, I didn't like the Leveson process. I didn't like the conclusion to it or the press bodies that have sort of emerged from it. It was fascinating. The people most in favour of that were the Lib Dems. And you would have thought they would have been the ones most arguing for freedom of speech in the history of their party.
Well, it's a great Churchill quote, isn't it? The point about freedom of speech, I can't remember the exact wording, but the point about freedom of speech is you've got to be able to listen to opinions you absolutely hate. That is that's the point of freedom of speech. It's not about just putting your fingers in your ears and listening to your own echo chamber.
And censorship, which is what it ultimately becomes, is undermining of all other freedoms, that once people aren't allowed to express their views, then you're able to stop them. The next stage is marching in favour of a cause they believe in, and so on. And it's very dangerous to democracy to undermine.
Now, a lot of people at the moment marching in the cause of Mogmentum.
Not that many.
You are the front runner to replace Theresa May as Conservative leader. People are now mobbing you in the street, I understand. You're becoming a bit of a pin-up to ladies of a certain disposition. How are you dealing with this newfound fame, Jacob Rees-Mogg?
Well, I'm glad to say you're slightly overstating it, or rather significantly overstating it, but in a flattering and generous way. Look, this is all good, silly season stuff. It was fun in August when there wasn't much news about, and a gentleman in Rotherham got Mogmentum tattooed on his chest, and that's splendid and kind of him. But it's not real. I'm not a candidate. I thoroughly support Mrs May. I want her to remain as Prime Minister. There isn't a leadership election in the Tory party, and if there were, I would not be a candidate.
Really?
I'm a backbench MP. In the history of the Prime Ministership, the party of government has never gone to a backbench MP to become Prime Minister. So just to clarify,
if there was a leadership contest, and many people think there will be sooner rather than later, you would 100% categorically not put your name in the race.
Well, what I'm saying is that a backbench MP...
I know what you're saying, but can you give me a straight answer to that one simple question?
I think I've given you...
So 100%?
A straight answer.
So if we play the tape back in a year, and there is a contest and you're running, I can say, Jacob Rees-Mogg, why should we vote for you when you told me an utter porcupine?
No, what I'm saying is that the circumstances in which somebody in my position would become leader of the party do not exist.
I agree. But they can exist.
Well, all sorts of things can exist.
But you 100% would never run to be leader?
One's got to be realistic about the situation that one's in. It would be a vanity for me to be thinking about the leadership as a backbench MP.
All politicians are vain, Jacob, you know that.
Well, I don't deny that. That has an element of vanity.
Let's assume you're all vain people.
All right,
and you're all ambitious. You're an MP. Most MPs, I know, are desperate to be Prime Minister. But can you look me in the eye and say you would never run to be leader?
I will tell you that I'm not desperate to be Prime Minister. What I enjoy...
That's not 100%, is it?
Well... It's 99.9%.
That's fine. That leaves wriggle room.
Well, I don't want wriggle room particularly. I just want to be realistic and sensible about this.
But the realistic thing, if you don't mind me jumping in, the realistic situation is Theresa May, many people feel, is a dead woman walking as Prime Minister, that she was terminally damaged by the recent election, which was pretty much a disaster for the Conservatives. And that whatever happens, she will be leaving before the next election, and the Tories will need another leader. I realise this is all hypothetical, but I also realise that because of this sentiment that's out there, your name has now become centre stage as somebody that actually the public perceive to be a character that they can buy into as a potential leader.
I don't think that they do buy into me as a potential leader, as it happens, though it's very flattering that there is this current speculation, but I don't think that's real. I also think the Prime Minister's position is stronger than you suggest. I think her authority has been rebuilding since the election result. And politics does change. When the election was called, most commentators thought that this was going to be the curtain call for Jeremy Corbyn, that the Labour Party was going to do so badly that even with the support of Momentum, he would not be able to remain leader of the party. a few months later, he's top of the pops. He's the strongest political leader in the country. And these things can change faster than one expects. On the other hand, David Cameron in 2015 looked as if he could be Prime Minister for as long as he wanted, and then a year later, just over, he'd gone. So I wouldn't assume that what it looks like now, or looked like a couple of months ago, is how it will continue.
Can we just, if you stood as leader, and if you became Prime Minister, can we just find out what sort of country that would be as a result, and your beliefs on things? You're a Brexiteer, aren't you? Do you think that EU nationals who already live in the UK should be allowed to remain?
Oh, yes, I wanted to say that immediately after the referendum. I think that people who have come here legally should be fully protected. All their rights should be preserved because they did so under a fair understanding of what our law was. It shouldn't be changed to affect them retrospectively. That would be deeply unfair.
OK. What are your views on same-sex marriage? Is that something you support?
I'm a Catholic and I take the teaching of the Catholic Church seriously in matters of faith and
Catholics who support same-sex marriage.
But marriage is a sacrament, and the decision of what is a sacrament lies with the Church, not with Parliament.
OK, does that mean that you oppose same-sex marriage?
I support the teaching of the Catholic Church.
Can I just establish, do you oppose same-sex marriage? I support the teaching of the Catholic Church.
But that means you oppose... I mean, I'm a Catholic, but I actually don't agree with the Catholic teaching.
Well, that's fair enough.
You do?
I support the teaching of the Catholic Church.
So you oppose same-sex marriage? Why are you afraid to say you oppose it?
Oh, the teaching of the Catholic Church is completely clear. But
you voted against
I did.
Didn't
the
you?
Marriage issue is the important thing. That this is not how people arrange their lives. It's that marriage is a sacrament, and a sacrament is under the authority of the Church, not of the state. This is exactly the argument that Thomas More made in opposition to the marriage of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn.
So religion plays a big part in your politics, it seems. Do you think that gay sex is a sin?
Again, on the issue of sin, it is quite clearly under the teaching of the Church not for me to judge. I very strongly feel that I should not judge what other people do. If you think, if we want to be religious this early in the morning, if you look at the woman taken in adultery, what does Christ say? Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And it is not for me to cast stones.
If you don't mind me saying, you've just not hidden, but you've used...
No, I haven't.
No, I'm going to rephrase that. You have used your Catholic belief to, rather than say you oppose same-sex marriage, say you support the Catholic Church's teaching of that. The Catholic Church, the Catholic Church believes that gay sex is a sin. So I don't think it's unreasonable to ask you, as indeed Tim Farron was asked, and it caused him a lot of damage, just a straight question, whether you think it's a sin.
I think I've answered the straight question, that is, that the teaching of the Church in matters of faith and morals is authoritative, but it is equally within the teaching of the Church that it is not for me to judge others.
So
and can I just
you were Prime Minister,
hold on just
would
a
the
minute.
teachings of the Church take precedence over your political views?
These matters within the House of Commons are free votes. They are not party votes. They are not an issue of party politics.
But you are being tipped as someone who would lead a party and potentially become Prime Minister of a multi-faith country.
Hold on. None of these issues are party political. They are issues that are decided by Parliament on free votes. They are not determined by the Prime Minister. There is no question of any of these laws being changed. There would not be a majority in the House of Commons for that. But why I emphasise the teaching of the Church is that I want to make it clear that I'm supporting something, not I'm opposing something. That is to say...
Same thing, though, isn't it?
No, it's not actually. It's subtly different. I don't want to criticise people who lead lives that are different to mine. But equally, I don't want to divert from the historic teaching of the Catholic Church.
OK.
So if I were to say to oppose, I would be inadvertently condemning people.
So what is your view, for example, what's your view of abortion?
I'm completely opposed to abortion. Life begins at the point of
conception. So why are you prepared to say you're opposed to abortion, but not opposed to the same-sex marriage?
Because it's a completely different kettle of fish.
It's a Catholic teaching.
No, hold on. It's a different kettle of fish. That with same-sex marriage, that is something that people are doing for themselves. With abortion, it is something that is done to the unborn child.
Are you completely opposed to abortion in all circumstances?
Yes, I am.
Rape and incest?
Sexual violence?
I'm afraid so.
Really?
Life is sacrosanct and begins at the point of conception. And I think it is
So
wrong.
if a woman is raped, say you were Prime Minister, and a woman is raped by a family member, right? You would say she had absolutely no right to have that baby aborted.
No, she would have a right under UK law.
Yeah, but you wouldn't agree with that, right?
But that law is not going to change.
No, but what's your personal opinion?
My personal opinion is that life begins at the point of conception and abortion is morally indefensible.
You would make her have that baby?
Well, I wouldn't, because that wouldn't be the law of the land.
I understand that.
But this is very important. This is really important.
But you know that Tim Farron, for example, it basically depth-charged his leadership campaign when he became leader almost immediately because he was challenged on his religious beliefs and people didn't like it.
Well, he's a Liberal Democrat and the Lib Dems have a very different tolerance. It's what we were discussing earlier. Oddly, the Conservative Party is much more tolerant of religious faith than the Lib Dems are. The Lib Dems pretend that they're liberal, but they could not cope with having a Christian as their leader. I think the Conservatives are much more tolerant of religious faith, and so they should be. It's all very well to say we live in a multicultural country until you're a Christian, until you hold the traditional views of the Catholic Church. And that seems to me fundamentally wrong. People are entitled to hold these views, but also the democratic majority is entitled to have the laws of the land as they are, which do not go with the teaching of the Catholic Church and will not go with the teaching of the Catholic Church.
Unfortunately, there we must leave it. But it's fascinating getting to know you, Jacob Rees-Mogg.
You're going to get a lot more of this now.
I thought we were going to talk about Brexit, but there we go.
You know what? We come back. Let's talk again about Brexit. You've become now a fascinating political figure in this country, and you are going to get challenged a lot on your personal views, and it's interesting to hear them.
I'm very happy to be challenged on my views and to be a loyal son of the Catholic Church, a loyal Conservative and a loyal subject of Her Majesty.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.